I'm bigcal, and welcome to my world. Today is an update to a yearly video that I have done on and off, unfortunately. Not as often as I should have done, which is every year. But I did it last year, was the first time in a while, I think. So yeah, doing another update, did it in May last year, so it's May again this year. And basically, it is my top 10 most wanted games throughout the year, in terms of games that I really want to add to my collection, not upcoming games or anything like that. So yeah, and it's not like a case of, the most expensive rare games, so there's not going to be Earthbound on here. I think it was on the list originally, along with like Mario RPG and things like that. Expensive games, I would like to own them physically, but honestly, there's not much chance of me actually getting them, so having them on the list and doing this list every year, updating it, kind of pointless, because odds are I'm just not going to get any of those time for games, so lowering my expectations a little bit. And there's also technically more than 10, but it's my list, I'll do what I want. So firstly, I'm going to go through what the list was last year. Then I'll show any changes, any games that I bought, and then do a new list with changes for this year. So first up, a mainstay on the list is WCW Super Brawl and WCW Main Event. They're a Super Nintendo and Game Boy game respectively. Obviously I collect wrestling games, I'm sure you know that by now. I already have a ton, but I don't have these. Main reason is they were North American exclusives, so never got them here in the UK. Getting hold of them, honestly, Super Brawl, I rarely see it come up on eBay. So that's always an issue, the availability of it. Plus, then have to pay delivery fee from America to get it, which is usually more than the game. I don't really want to spend more on postage than I do for a game. Main Event, the Game Boy, similar thing. Probably shows up more often. It's not really something I've looked into that much. I'll have to change that this year and actually make a real effort to get the games if I can. So check my list here. Another mainstay, Excitebots Trick Racing. Couldn't remember the full name of it. It is the sequel to Excite Trucks on the Nintendo Wii. Excite Trucks, one of my favourite Wii games. I have a video review of it somewhere up here. Click that, and it is, of course, a spiritual sequel-y type game to the Excite Bike series. Except Excite Trucks was mega fun. Never really cared for the Excite Bike series. Excite Trucks was amazing. The motion controls were fantastic with it, which, especially for a game that I believe was a launch title in the US, came out maybe a month or so later here in Europe, for the motion controls to be that good with it, very impressive. Tons of fun, love that game. The sequel never came out in Europe. Yeah, so North American exclusive for the most part. Then I think in Japan it was like Club Nintendo exclusive or something daft, so it's not even that easy to get there. So again, I have to import it from America. Costs money, delivery charges, but I would like to play it. Some people think it's a lot better than Excite Trucks, some people don't. There's kind of like a thing where you grab hold of a rail and you have to sort of go like that to swing around. It doesn't look like the most fun edition, but everything else seems pretty good, so I would like to try it out. So maybe this is the year I finally get it. Moving on then, we have, for the Super Nintendo, not a particularly great game. Gets a lot of mixed reviews. It's a beat 'em up, and it's Power Rangers. Now, there are a couple of different Power Rangers games on the SNES. There's a one for the film. I think that's a beat 'em up as well. There's a fighting game. I think there's even a kart racer, which I would also like to get at some point. But yeah, this one's just the bog standard. I think it's just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. No subtitles or anything with it at all. Just the standard game. And the reason I want it is because I grew up playing it. It's not the best beat 'em up game, but I always had fun with it as a kid, and I would like to enjoy it again now I'm an adult. I'm an old man now, yeah. So, again, it's one of those games, if I'm looking to buy something, I might skip over it and get something else instead. It's like, no, I'm going to try and double down and actually make an effort to try and get it, finally, and add it to my collection. Hopefully. We'll see. Next then, we have 3 games for the price of 1. Well, actually 3 games for the price of 3, unfortunately. Twisted Metal 1, 3, and 4, all for the PlayStation 1. Twisted Metal 1, yeah, that's getting expensive these days. That's a bit of an issue with that. 3 and 4, didn't come out in Europe. Yep, more import games that I have to get from America. They're already getting quite pricey in general anyway, and then the postage fees on top. Twisted Metal, I love half of the series, and I dislike the other half of the series. But I would like to own the complete collection of all the games, and fortunately these are the ones that I need, and they're also the ones that are part of the half that I don't like. So yeah, I want them to complete my collection, but they're not the best of games, they're expensive, and yeah, but I really do want to complete my Twisted Metal collection and then do a big video on them one day. Yeah, should be interesting to see if Twisted Metal 1 in any way holds up. Twisted Metal 2 was just a masterpiece, so I never really put that much time into Twisted Metal 1, so I'd quite like to, in a more legal fashion, I guess. So, moving on then, we have Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door for the Nintendo GameCube. One of the premier RPGs on the system, because there weren't really that many. And it's usually the Paper Mario game that people go to as being the best. And they're always so disappointed when modern ones aren't anything like this one. So yeah, big game that I would love to play. Rather expensive. Yeah. Luckily it's not in the Earthbound realm of expensive, so it is affordable if I'm willing to pay for it. And we have Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 for the N64, Japanese exclusive, so yep, there's the issue. Used to be, especially Japanese wrestling games, you could buy these just so dirt cheap. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, though, still commands a pretty hefty price just for cart only. If you want complete in box, obviously more, but yeah, just cart only, then of course you have to import it, which adds to the cost. So yeah. But it's supposed to be the premier wrestling game on the N64, basically, your No Mercy and WCW, NWO Revenge, kind of that engine, but people think it's just a little bit better. I think it was the more modern release of all of those. Yeah, so obviously, big wrestling game fan, want to own all the wrestling games, definitely need the better ones, and this is included, so yeah. Then we have Dragon Ball Origins 2 for the Nintendo DS. Dragon Ball Origins 1 and 2 use the touchscreen. A lot of it basically for moving around, doing your attacks, everything with the touchscreen. And unlike most Dragon Ball games, where it just goes through the Z portion of the story, this is just Dragon Ball. The old school Goku stuff. The first game is pretty fun. I actually own that one, that's why it's not on this list. Yeah, but it goes through some of the more boring parts of Dragon Ball, aka Peel Off, and then the Red Ribbon Army. I'm not the biggest fan of the Red Ribbon Army saga. Yeah, after that, that's when Dragon Ball for me really gets good. And of course the sequel focuses a lot more on the good parts, and they improved a lot on the functionality and how the touchscreen works and everything. And yep, it's an expensive game these days, so that's the major hitting point, but I would really like to add it to my collection. Next up is PlayStation 1 game, Ape Escape. This close to getting it earlier this year. Ended up with Ape Escape P, which is the PSP title, that's what it's known as here in Europe. Yeah, it's just a port of the first game, but on the PSP, and obviously it's a little bit finicky because you don't have the dual analog sticks, but it works really well, but I still want that original proper port, proper version of the game. And I almost got it, but somebody else snatched it up before I could for the price I was willing to pay for it. Damn you. Yeah. Next, the Dreamcast game, one that I ordered at one point, and then the order was cancelled because the guy couldn't find all the front cover, it turns out was fake and all this, so yeah, whatever. Dynamite Cop. Basically, Die Hard, the game, but without the license. And yeah, I've only played a demo of it through one of the Dream On demo discs. Absolutely amazingly fun game. So yeah, unfortunately, again, it commands a higher price, but it's really, really fun, and the Dreamcast, a system that I've grown to love over the last couple of years, definitely want to add this one to my collection. And finally, Dragon Warrior 4 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, the fourth Dragon Quest game, the last one to be released on the NES, and of course, only in America, never got it here in Europe. And of course it's the most expensive of the old Dragon Quest titles, so yeah, I need it for my Dragon Quest collection. I'll need it for next year when I do Dragon Questober 4. Obviously 3's coming up this year, but 4 next year when I review Dragon Warrior 4 and all the other versions. So I kind of need it for that. So that is last year's list. So what have I gotten since then that can be taken off and replaced? Well, first up, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 for the N64. Yep, finally picked it up. I got it a little bit cheaper than what it typically goes for. Still, it was about £50 or something. But I'm happy to finally own it, and I get use out of my Japanese N64 as well. So that's really cool. So very happy with that. Yes, it's a very good wrestling game. It's got some improvements over some of the older wrestling games for the N64. And yeah, I'm looking forward to really diving in at some point and playing through it properly. There is an English fan localisation out. I'm not really keen on emulating it or anything like that. You can get cartridges with it on, which I might do at some point. We'll see. Yeah, so looking forward to that. Then we have an expensive game. Of course, if you've seen some of my pickups videos, you'll already know that this is off the list. Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door. Got it for considerably cheaper than what I was willing to pay for it. Already played through it. Really, really good game. Perhaps not worth the money that I paid for it. Don't think it's the all-time classic a lot of people consider it. It does have some issues that prevent me from really loving it, but it's a very good game and I am happy that I got it. And lastly, a game that I don't actually have physically on me at the moment. It is on its way. Yeah, ordered it, got it cheaper than it should normally go for. Still making it the most expensive game in my collection though, and that is Dragon Warrior 4. Represented here by my reproduction case that I bought last year. If you saw my Dragon Questober pickups, I bought the box, a bit dusty there, for 3 and 4, because obviously I got 3 last year. So I thought, well, I'll be getting 4 eventually, might as well get the box with the manual and everything inside, all reproduction, very nice. So this is going to have a cartridge in it later this year. Well, hopefully in a couple of weeks. But I'll talk more about that during Dragon Questober pickups video. So those are 3 games off the list. 2 of them, the pretty pricey games. 1 of them, medium priced. Yeah, so I'll just grab the old list here. And we'll go through what is the new list for 2023 going into 2024. So, from the previous list, go through these nice and quick. WCW Super Brawl / Main Event for the Super Nintendo and Game Boy. Excitebox Trick Racing for the Nintendo Wii. Power Rangers for the Super Nintendo. Twisted Metal 1, 3 and 4 for the PlayStation 1. Dragon Ball Origins 2 for the DS. Ape Escape for the PlayStation 1. Dynamite Cup for the Dreamcast. And now for the new games that are getting added to replace the 3 that I bought. Firstly, a game that probably nobody's going to call a good game, myself included, but again it's one of those I grew up with, and that is The Real Ghostbusters on the Game Boy. And what's interesting about this game is, depending on what region you're in, you'll have got a different game entirely. So, in Japan, it's part of the Crazy Castle series, only with Mickey Mouse. In Europe, it was a Garfield game, and in North America, it was The Real Ghostbusters based on the cartoon. Somehow, I had The Real Ghostbusters game, the American one, growing up as a kid. And it's just always one of those games that I wanted to add back to my collection, so yeah. But again, it's one of those games, it's going up in price very slowly, so I'll have to grab it before it can do that. Next, we have an original Xbox game, also was on the PC, then got ported to the Xbox. So the PC version was called Mob Enforcer. The Xbox version that I want is Chicago Enforcer. Unfortunately, I don't believe it came out in Europe, so another import. Why do so many games not come out here? So I'm a huge fan of the Mafia and the lore and the history of it all. I've seen tons of documentaries, read a bunch of books, watched all the films and dramatisations of it, and it's just a world that fascinates me. And I also love the video games related to it. The Godfather video game, fantastic. The Mafia series, a lot of fun to be had there, even if sometimes the gameplay is not the best. Yeah, there were things like Made Man on the PS2 with Joe Bonanno's son, I believe, was actually part of the team helping write and create the story. So yeah, it's an interesting title that I would like to add to the collection just because I'm a huge fan of the Mafia and all that thing. It's not supposed to be the best game, but again, I would still like it for the collection. And lastly, had to add another RPG to the list that I would want, and that is the original Sega Master System version of Phantasy Star, Sega's big RPG series. So yeah, a lot of people when they think Phantasy Star usually go to the Mega Drive games, more specifically Phantasy Star 2 and 4, but I would really like to own the first one. Kind of like the original Dragon Quest, sort of that kind of vein. You want to own the original. Might not be the best game, but for historical purposes and just neat to have, basically. So those are the 3 games that I'm adding to my list for this year. The Real Ghostbusters for the Game Boy, Chicago Enforcer for the original Xbox, and Phantasy Star for the Sega Master System. Well, I'm Big Cow. Thanks for watching. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of my new additions to this list. Let me know what games you're looking out for this year, and I'll see you again next time.